go. So where are you?
Hi, I'm in Berlin, Germany, at home currently.
Oh, cool. Berlin's so cool.
Have you been several times or once?
I want to say I've been twice. No, I have. I can say that, and it's true. Yes, but not
Cool.
for a long time. I think the last time I was there, I was pregnant with my big kid, and they are now 12. So it was quite
Oh,
a long time ago. But yeah.
wow. It's been 10 years since I've been to the UK,
There
so
we go. We're both due a visit.
yes.
Amazing. Thank you so much for getting in touch with me about your super interesting and resourceful way of making. It's so interesting, and it's a topic that I try to address a lot on the podcast, but you've got a really kind of unique approach to it. So I'm really looking forward to digging into it. So can you please tell us who you are, where you are? Well, we know you're in Berlin, and what fills your days?
Hi, I'm Mariel. Yeah, I'm in Berlin, Germany. What fills my days is junior school teaching,
Oh.
but I used to be in environmental science, so I've switched careers in the last 3 years. I just could not sit in an office anymore, which is one of the reasons I changed careers. And when I'm not at school or preparing the lessons, I like to hang out with friends and sew or do some sort of upcycling or creative endeavors. And my main season for sewing is autumn and winter usually. So I usually can't be bothered to sew like when it's really hot.
You're out and about doing stuff.
Yeah.
Lovely. So you started your message to me by saying that you've been sewing for about 5 years, but you've never bought fabric. So firstly, what inspired you to start sewing? And from the outset, was the goal always not to buy new materials?
I think I've been interested in sewing for years since I was a teenager, but I don't know whether a lot of people have this experience. It took me ages to get a sewing machine.
Right. So you were sewing curious.
Yes, and my dad had a sewing machine and he sewed all sorts of things for his household, and he actually taught me to sew.
Oh, cool.
And my first ever project was when I was 17. I sewed a plushie that looks like an electric guitar for a friend who likes to play the guitar.
Oh, adorable.
And I only remember that yesterday because actually this first ever sewing project of mine was made from an old pair of trousers.
Of course it was.
Because actually it wasn't that old. It must have been a fast fashion pair of skinny jeans. It was 2010 or something, and I'd worn them just a few times, and they'd got this huge tear in the crotch that I did not know how to mend. So I decided to turn these trousers into a fairly large guitar plushie for my friend, and he really liked it. So that was my first ever project, and then I didn't sew for years until 2020 when I finally got a sewing machine. And as you can imagine, some of my first projects were masks back when
I was going to say 2020.
back when fabric masks were a thing. So I was making those, but I started all sorts of projects instantly. I started doing applique to t-shirts, and I started making keychains for friends and all sorts of things.
And it was all with materials that you had already.
Yeah. So I contacted you because while listening to your podcast, I've noticed we've all got all sorts of ideas and ways of doing things in this creative field. And when I hear about things like no buy challenges for fabric, I'm like, wait, I don't ever buy fabric.
You need a buy challenge.
Yeah, something like that. I need to experience for once buying 3 meters of fabric and what it's like to make something out of that. I'm actually looking forward to that someday. But in 2020, I just had fabric at home because I had old clothes or sheets that are being worn through. But I also went about this hobby the way I go about most of my creative hobbies. I've done paper collage art previously. That was my main art form, I would say, which is just using materials that I'd maybe collected a bit or just pulled out of the bin, really.
Yeah.
I remember I made a keychain in the shape of a leaf for a friend who loves potted plants. And I used some fabric that I found in the street in Berlin. So this is a bit regional. I am in Berlin, and Berlin is a very creative city. And it's true that a lot of things lie around in the street. which I love, which can be just great. There's just piles of things and boxes where people are giving away things, but there is also a bit of rubbish lying around in the Berlin streets. But I find the most weird and wonderful things in the streets. And the masks I made from bed sheets, and there was this funny coincidence because I used these old IKEA bed sheets that I probably got from a neighbor to make all these masks. And then I went to the library and I was wearing one of these very distinctive IKEA mask patterns. And the librarian was wearing the exact same one. So she bought or sewed herself
Oh,
masks from the
funny. You're like,
same
snap.
sheets. Yeah, it was very funny. And I made the ties back then from cut up pieces of hoses or socks.
Mm,
So
nice and stretchy.
I was making it all zero waste, which was typical for me because that's just like zero waste and environmental topics and creative reuse has just been my interest for years and
I
years.
love that. So that's just how you approach kind of all endeavors, really, with that mindset.
Yeah.
Amazing. So, what things do you kind of sew these days? Are you making your own clothes? Are you making? I mean, you say you're making accessories and plushies and stuff. Like, what are you making these days?
I've started, yeah, I've ventured into clothes or let's say clothes to wear in everyday life recently. Recently, I've been making tops and easy trousers such as pajamas or just cloth trousers. But I also make clothes and accessories for medieval events. That's like
Oh,
a
wow.
hobby of mine. I do LARPing and I've made all sorts of things for all sorts of clothing items for that.
Amazing. Once again, from what are you reclaiming for those?
So I've made a hat from a shrunk kid's wool jumper because that's basically felted wool that I found in the street. I've made stockings from fabric remnants that look like wool, but they're actually felted cotton or something like that. I've made a Google, which is a specifically medieval item of clothing. It's a hood. It's basically a hood with a mini cape that only goes to the
I can
shoulders.
imagine. Yeah, I can picture that.
I made that from remnant fabrics that weren't very wide. These are pieces of fabric 30 centimeters wide and 60 centimeters long or something. I've had one or two failed projects, like one tunic where I didn't understand how to make necklines yet. And I'm sure there's others I can't remember right now, but that sort of thing.
Yeah. You sound like you're very, like, things don't hold you back. It sounds like you kind of invent and figure out things as you go. It sounds like you're very productive and there's not like endless, like researching on how to do something. It sounds like you kind of get stuck in quite quickly.
Yes, and I think if a project is too complicated for me, I just won't do it at all.
Right.
So for example, I've never made a dress. And then the first time I make a dress, I'll probably make a very simple one because I know that, if there's so many new things in one project, it's just not going to work out.
Well, that's good to know about yourself.
Yeah, it is. And I could just go on with all the things I make. I like to make a lot of accessories like
Please go on. That's
mittens.
what we're here for.
I make mittens all the time because I also lose mittens.
And you live in Berlin and it gets cold.
That's true. And then they need double layers, right? So you can just make two pairs of mittens and then line the one with the other, or reversible mittens. I'm an expert.
What are you making your mittens from?
Everything. The first ones were from a fleece hood that a neighbor just had lying around and she didn't know what it belonged to. And the elastic was from a random elastic belt that was probably also from 2010 that I found in the street. And I've also made patchwork mittens
Cool.
that are from tiny pieces of felted material that I patchworked. And then the elastic was from old socks. So it's nice color combination. I like to reuse the top elastic part of socks. Like there's so many uses: hair ties, elastic, cuff replacements, that sort of
Yeah,
thing.
tying up plants to bamboo
Exactly.
canes and
There's so much rag rugs. I make headbands, wallets, or what do you call them in British English?
purses.
Purses, exactly. I've made a lot of purses.
I saw those. You made some out of like marquee fabric samples.
Yes, that was a lovely story. A friend's mother was throwing something into the bin, and she saw this big book of marquee fabric samples that someone had thrown away. So she gave them to her son, and he passed them right on to me. And I saw this book. I was like, this is so cool. And it said on the outside, marquee fabric, water repellent, durable. And I was like, oh, I could make purses out of this. And it has the right shape. So I make sort of small purses that you fit into your back jeans pocket, but I also make big ones. And those have been very successful. I've even sold those
Cool.
to friends and acquaintances. So I still have loads of marquee fabric samples. So I can probably sew them my whole life, and it just goes on and on.
Amazing.
Yeah.
So, obviously, when you're sewing with reclaimed and existing resources, that offers up challenges and limitations. So, how do you approach a project? Like, do you establish like a need or a want for a particular item, and then you're keeping your eyes peeled for something suitable? Or is it kind of the other way around? It sounds like with the marquee fabric, it's like you found the discarded textiles and then you worked out a use of what to make from that. Do you know what I mean?
Yeah. I think I'm very much the type that looks at the material and then makes something out of that. It was similar with my paper collage art, right? I never had a vision of a collage. I would just collect cool pieces of paper and then make something out of that. And it's the same with sewing. So, for example, currently I've got this scrap jersey fabric that someone gave me, tiny scraps. And I look at it and I think I could make some underwear out of this. I mean, underwear is so easy because you don't need as much fabric as you do for other pieces of clothing. And that's just how it works most of the time, or with the wallets. But I also do have a few needs in the back of my head so that when I see something, I can say, yes, I could use that. I also need to, like many sewists, make sure I just don't collect everything I come
This is what
across.
I was thinking. Like, how much storage are we talking here? How much room have you got?
Well, I have got a sewing nook. So in my room, I have a regular desk for teachers work, and then I have another small desk for sewing, which I'm very lucky to have. And then I've just got this pile as big as a child just lying next to it in boxes. So I'm trying to not increase that pile and only get things into it that I have proper plans for. But I think it's very funny that I have the same issue as if I was buying
Yeah,
fabric.
you've still got a stash. It's just found on the
Yeah,
street.
but you know what the great thing is? I do some purging sometimes. Actually, with the Marie Kondo method, which is probably very
Yeah,
famous. I also just this is the method by a Japanese author that helps you to get rid of things. And I go through every piece of fabric and I only keep the ones that spark joy regularly.
nice.
But it's very cool when I haven't bought any of this fabric, it's easier to let go. So I,
Right. Yeah.
like others, so it's probably I put the piece of fabric I don't want to use after all into a bag, and then I just put them online to give away. And then other people who like crafting or sewing pick them up. But it's a nice flow because it was free. Like,
Yeah, that financial investment isn't there, so there's less of a reason to for it to stay in your possession.
totally. Yeah, yeah. And things keep coming into the pile because, of course, I have clothes that just get worn. And if there's a possibility for me to reuse them, they go into that stash too, right?
Yeah, yeah. So you were saying that you have some kind of needs in your mind that you're kind of
Hmm.
keeping your eyes peeled, ready for something suitable to fulfill that need. What are some of the needs that you've got in your mind at the moment?
I've noticed how practical small cotton bags that you can tie at the top are.
Ah,
I'm trying to use those for storage because I think they're prettier than other storage solutions, and also for traveling. So I have one when I'm traveling for socks, and one for underwear, and one for electronics. And I'm trying to make more of those, but also for my drawers. So definitely that.
oh, that's cool. I'm inspired now. I'm like, oh, I want to be that organized.
Yeah, I want to be organized. And then, funnily enough, I want to have some to put fabric in,
Oh,
um, because
of course.
I also keep the tiniest scraps for stuffing
Yeah.
for plushies. So I want to have like a cotton bag to put those in, but I want it to be a tie string or whatever you call it at the top, so not a tote bag or something.
And what's cool about that as well is that when you're making it yourself, you've kind of got control of what the dimensions are. So if you have like
Yeah,
you know how, what kind of capacity you need, you can design
yeah.
it specifically for you.
True. I always have an eye open for bedding because it's a lot of fabric.
Mm.
And a lot of people do, put it in the street in a box and say this is for free or whatever, or pass it on online. Because I do want to make like a wrap skirt at some point, and then I would probably need one or two sets of sheets, or but not too worn and that sort of thing. But I can't think of the other ones I've got in the back of my mind right now.
That's
Yeah.
cool. So when you're sewing things, do you use sewing patterns? Do you use tutorials? Like how or what kind of approaches do you use to form the kind of the structure and the dimensions of your projects?
I do a lot of cloning. So from
Ah,
the beginning, even when I did not know much, I just cloned underwear, like underwear that is typically associated with men, but also, small panties. And I also then next I ventured into zero waste patterns. I actually made the spiral trousers by Holly McQuillan. Do you know them?
yes, I will put a link
Oh,
to them in the show notes. Yeah.
I love them. I found that on Pinterest and I really enjoyed making the pattern. It was so fabric saving. It's insane. I made it from sheets and I made pajama pants and they used so little fabric and they looked incredible. I just added some darts in the end. And I also use these zero waste patterns for medieval sewing because in like medieval dress patterns were zero waste, like
Yeah.
tunics. People added gauze, which is instead of making a half circle skirt, they took a rectangle and they added triangles at intervals to make it something that has a curve,
Yeah.
and they're called gauze. And these triangles were cut out of rectangles and all sorts of things. It's really cool. I For any sewist looking for zero waste patterns, don't forget to research supposed Viking and medieval patterns. Some of them are not original, but some of them are because, for example, maybe they found preserved people in a moor, where the fabric is also preserved, and then they can reconstruct the sewing pattern. So there are, historical sewing patterns where they
Amazing.
can.
So where are the resources for those? Because that sounds fascinating.
I honestly just Googled them or I saw them on Pinterest. If you like one or two things on Pinterest, it'll
Yeah.
just show
You
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 more of
get
it.
brought more, yeah.
But there's also books on patterns, but it's not called zero waste. It's called, Viking tunic or something like that.
Yeah, because I mean, until very recently, really, in terms of history, fabric was so precious, wasn't it? That every pattern or way of constructing clothing was zero waste, wasn't it? There wasn't.
Yeah.
It was too precious to kind of cut half a circle off and then just
Yeah.
discard it.
And it's so interesting. For example, these days, your sleeves, they're usually not a rectangle if you cut them out. If you
Mm.
have long sleeved, you're not. But in medieval times, often, first of all, it was often wool fabric, which is a bit stretchy in itself. But let's say it was linen, which is not that stretchy. The sleeve would have been a rectangle, and the extra fabric needed under the arm would have been provided by a small square
Ah.
of fabric. And this method is so cool. I just recommend everyone to look at it because it provides so much ease.
Oh, like a gusset.
Oh yeah, a gusset. Yeah, exactly.
A lot of 1950s dresses have that, I think, as well,
Mm.
where they have the grown on sleeve. So the sleeve is kind of part of the
Ah,
body. And then for that ease of movement, sometimes there's almost like a diamond shape almost, isn't there? Under
yeah.
the arm. Yeah. That's cool that that's the same technique that has been used in history frequently, different times.
Yeah, I have to watch out that I don't go off on a tangent about medieval pattern construction because there's so many fun facts. One last fun fact is that the seam is usually not under the arm
Mm.
because if you have the seam under the arm, you have this typical sleeve pattern where you've got the sleeve and then where the sleeve attaches to the bodice, you've got this hill
Yeah.
shape, right? But this hill shape, it's kind of bulky. But if you have the seam of the arm that you're trying to sew at the back of the arm, facing towards the back, if someone was standing behind, you could see the seam, then you don't have a hill shape. You sort of have the hill on the left and then the
Ah,
valley, if you look at the sleeves,
that makes
because
sense. Yeah.
now you've sort of moved it over to the side. And if you have those, then it's very easy to piece the two sleeves together at this point. You've got one hill and one valley for the one sleeve where it attaches to the body, and then the other one. And then you can put them together like Lego, and it's very fabric saving. Then you could make the two sleeves out of a long strip of rectangular fabric, no fabric wasted. So if you look at historical clothing, maybe that's the reason why those sometimes or often have the seam at the back, not under the arm like
Yeah.
today. That's just the last
No,
fun
I
fact
love that.
from.
I love that. And I think I saw something similar in. Do you know there's a zero waste designer called Liz Hayward? She lives in
Yeah.
Australia. She created a series of zines. I think it was called A Year of Zero Waste Sewing.
Hmm.
And she produced 12 zero waste themed booklets. And I think in there she was talking about the tessellation of sleeves. And that was something that I saw. Yeah,
Oh,
really
okay.
interesting
Yes,
resource.
tessellation is the word, right?
Yeah,
Where geometric shapes they fit into each other.
yeah.
Yes.
Yeah, absolutely.
Mm.
So obviously you're finding things on the street that are just laying around, and you've obviously got textiles and resources that are in your home already. But it sounds like you are collecting things from, say, like free cycle or things like that, and vice versa. You're giving things away. So therefore, I'm imagining that you have to establish different kinds of relationships with people when you're accessing and giving away materials in a way that's really different to the kind of transactional relationship, of like a shopper going into a shop and ordering the 3 meters of fabric from a salesperson. And I'm really interested in how your approach to sourcing supplies kind of affects your relationship with your local area as well as the kind of people in it. Can you talk a bit about that?
Good question. I think it can go in both directions because I feel like these days it's possible to source free fabric, like an anonymous, fairly anonymous way if you go on websites like I think Craigslist is internationally well known, or
Yeah.
these local eBays. You can just usually get free fabric if you look out for it and just pick it up at someone's house. But of course, picking up at someone's house is a bit more personal than buying it at a shop. But true, I do get to know my neighborhood differently. Like I'm going to different people's houses. I'm finding things in the street and someone must have got rid of them there. I'm going to flea markets and seeing what people, I tend to buy things like embroidery thread at the flea market there, or I'm asking people to give me their shrunk wool that is no longer usable to them. So that's sort of, I think people know this, the people start giving you things when you're.
Right, you have a reputation of
Yeah, but I actually really admire the author Mark Boyle. He's an Irish person known as the Moneyless Man. Have you heard of
No,
him?
I'll put a link in the show notes.
Yeah, he really inspired me already 10 years ago because he's an economist and he decided to live money free, or first less and less money and then no money. And he draws attention to the fact that the more money we use, the less community we have to have, which for some people is a luxury. You can buy the time of a psychotherapist, you can buy a massage, you can get someone to bring food to your house, which sometimes can be a great luxury. But also the technical advancements and using money can contribute to loneliness. So if we've all got our own thermos flask, we don't need to get together and make a fire to heat our tea, was his very practical example from Ireland, from his ancestors. Or if you've got the money to get a psychotherapist and a massage therapist, then you may not notice that no one's in your life who would gladly give you a massage because you always help them with this and that. And that really influenced me at the beginning of my 20s. What's also very important to me is a lot of people these days see parts of friendships like going for coffee, very no exchange relationships. But the deepest relationships I've formed have also been when we've had to work together. Like I feel like some people make friends at work or in volunteering, and having to work together, having to share things, being in need, or working even against something together, like situations or neighbors or something, can really bring people together. So that's also one of the reasons why I explore frugal living, frugal meaning reduced use of money. I would say, apart from fostering community, it also fosters amazing experiences. Like I have so many stories to tell just from, let's say, sourcing fabric.
Yeah, give us some examples.
Well, not amazing stories, but I don't know. My friend had saw online that there was a sewing school near him that was giving away fabric, leftover fabric, and he let me know, and we went there, and then they started a conversation, and I think that the teacher there gave him tips on a project and he wants to go there maybe, and I know that this sewing school exists, and she told me what is left over there, and it was just a completely different experience from buying online, which is of course the biggest possible, being
Distance,
far away
yeah.
distance, and then in comparison to going to a shop, maybe your regular shop.
I know I'm thinking a lot about that at the moment in the way that we are recording this on the run up to Christmas, and a lot of the people that I am friends with and have as my family are, we celebrate Christmas and we buy presents. And I literally, somebody yesterday asked me like, "Oh, are you done for Christmas?" And I'm like, I haven't really started, but they were like, "Oh, I just did everything on Amazon." As in, they literally just, I mean, like, I get it, people are busy, but it was like, "Oh, wow, you just sat there on your phone or on your computer and tap 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 tap." You didn't
Mm,
go to any shops. You didn't like go for a coffee whilst you were there. You didn't
mm.
like interact with people. Like it was just tap 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 tap. I was mulling that over with my husband this morning and thinking like, soon, you're going to be able to pay somebody to do. Oh, you probably can, but this is not a service I would access or know about. You could probably get everyone to like wrap it all for you. And then he was thinking about how probably very soon there'll be a situation where you can kind of tell your computer or the algorithm like who you need a present for and what they're into and what your budget is, and they'll choose something even for you, that it's becoming, it'll probably, and then you get someone to wrap it for you, and then like it'll just appear, and then you just have to hand it over, and you had no interaction really or no responsibility for that whole process.
True. Probably, yes. Or you just enter their social media accounts, and then
Yes,
the website will tell you based on who they follow what they were probably
that's it.
influenced to like or something.
Oh god, yeah.
Yeah.
Oh wow. That's terrifying. Anyway, the opposite of that is what we're looking for.
Yeah, I've actually reduced present pressure in my life. I don't have kids, so that's a completely different topic to deal with, I think, because if I had children and the children are under peer pressure from their peers, I would probably be getting them all sorts of gifts, and also because it's fun. But my friends and my partner and I, we mostly have the agreement that we only give each other a gift at any time if we really want to give that person something because we had an idea,
Oh,
and then the rest of the time we just don't. And I have such a relaxing Christmas because my partner and I don't have to give each other anything unless we had an idea, and his siblings and him have the same arrangement and that sort of thing.
that's amazing.
It's really, really relaxing.
How have you managed to extract yourself out of that kind of expectation?
I don't know. I think it started with my partner, and he'd got the arrangement with the siblings anyway. And then I also, I think, told his parents that I don't expect much, and that it's very stressful for me to find presents for people.
Yeah, when you've got that time pressure and that deadline, you're like, oh, I don't know.
Totally.
Yeah, I'm feeling that a lot.
When it's my birthday, I tell people, please don't give me presents. Please bring food for the party, which then
Oh,
load off my mind because I don't have to prepare so much food. And then, sort of, because people don't give me a big present, I sort of prepare them that I'm probably going to give them food too. It does tend to work in my bubble, let's say.
yeah,
I'm very relaxed during Christmas because I'm not preparing many Christmas presents, mostly cards and things like that. Yeah,
lovely.
yeah, we're off on a
No,
tangent,
no,
but
these are
yeah,
the tangents we want. These are the interesting tangents, yeah, because it all feeds into, because I think there's probably a lot of people, I mean, to a certain extent myself included, because I do have kids and there is a lot of pressure to and in the wider family to get presents for the kids and get presents for the siblings and the partners and everything. So it's interesting to hear how you have approached it, or where the, yeah, like how, like who did it come from, how was it adopted, because there is so much societal pressure and so much expectation, and it's not just the commercial expectation, but obviously that is a big part of it. But there is a lot of expectation, and it's really interesting to hear people doing things a little bit differently. Like saying, like the kind of rule, for want of a better word, you've set up that only buying a present if you see something that is really significant that you think, yeah, that's perfect. It's nice to hear and useful to hear how that came about.
Yeah. And again, I'm sort of a frugal person, but that means I'm frugal, meaning money reduced in the areas where it's easy and important to me. I have given friends, spontaneously a 70 € massage voucher if I just felt that they just needed a massage or something.
Yeah.
Or I have given friends expensive presents or something spontaneously.
Yeah, it's not about not spending money
Yeah.
across the board. It's being about mindful about
Yeah.
where, yeah.
But I know that I just want to give it to them in that moment, and it's no strings attached. I just want to give it, and then there's no pressure to give them something on their birthday and Christmas, and it has to be this and that or something. Yeah.
Nice. I think there's a lot of people maybe starting to question like Valentine's Day.
Mm.
I mean, I certainly myself and my husband we kind of acknowledge it, but it's not necessarily like this thing that you have to tick all the boxes and buy the roses and buy the thing and the thing. So yeah, it's interesting because I think that may be questioning whether or not gifts are necessary to, a lot of spending is necessary for the enjoyment and the celebration of that particular thing. Like maybe that's not something that's as widespread yet, so it's really interesting and inspiring to hear people, not basically like exploring a different way to celebrate. So for example, in terms of celebrations, like, so how would you say like you like people to bring food? So it sounds like you have a party for your birthday, for example. So how you're still celebrating birthdays and Christmas, for example, but you're just not
Yeah.
necessarily doing it in terms of the gift exchange.
Exactly. And I sew, so people get presents from me, or I sew decorations, or I make cards. Like again, I like paper art and that sort of thing. It's just for me personally, the gift giving has been stressful always, so I do avoid it a bit, to be
Yeah.
honest.
No, but I love that because I think pretty much everyone finds it stressful unless it's like, or at least like obligatory in some way.
Yeah,
Yeah.
but some people love it, of course. I think some people have
True.
this talent for gift giving, and they
That's
just
true.
love going to the shops, and it's so beautiful to see. And
Yeah.
they often the people who maybe take over and prepare a group present and that sort of thing.
Yeah, that's true. I'm thinking of my mother-in-law who's no longer with us, but yeah, that was her whole thing was like spreadsheet. She had like 10 grandkids, so
Oh,
but she didn't have the time pressure of like a 9 to 5 job, and so she had a bit of time, and but most people, their lives are pretty busy, aren't they?
yeah.
So I want to talk more. I want to hear more about. So you're interested in that kind of frugal living and frugality and reduced spending, and the impact that has in terms of community. But what about your familial background? Like how you grew up? Is that an impact on how you kind of view these things?
Yeah, definitely. I thought about that in preparation for the podcast. And my dad was born before the second, sorry.
Wow.
My dad was born before the Second World War started. And my mother was born shortly after the Second World War. And they were both frugal in some ways. So, they were keeping things just in case. And my dad was able to sew, so he sewed his own. What are these called?
Curtains.
Curtains, and he sewed all sorts. So he also sewed those little practical cotton bags for travel
Ah, he was
out
on
of
it.
old clothes. Yeah.
Do you know how he or who he learnt to sew from?
I do not know actually, but he did grow up partly in the GDR, so Eastern Germany, and things were not always available in the GDR. So I'm sure it was part of his skill set there.
Right.
So yeah, that's where I learned,
So
and
kind of frugality and
yeah.
resourcefulness through necessity.
Yes,
And
definitely. But I also they've passed away, and I went through their flats, both of them, after they passed. And after having emptied two flats and also helped friends with the same thing when their parents passed, I also saw, how much we have, how much we already have in our households, how much we collect, which has also turned me into a bit of a minimalist, except for fabric. It's like the one exception. And So these things have really influenced me.
So your parents, they were keeping hold of textiles and other items and then reusing them as well in this kind of inventive way.
Yeah, they were, and they were big on mending too, which has influenced me a lot. Oh, yes, and I think my dad also educated me on the environmental topics earlier on. So I've always been a sort of environmentalist, and then I was really inspired by the zero waste movement that was got really big in 2014, 2015, and I became a hardcore zero waste person for a few years.
Tell me about how that manifested. Like, what did that look like? What do you mean?
So I saw videos and I read books by famous zero waste people like Bea Johnson and I think Lauren something. And I decided I just did not want to produce any household waste at all. So
Oh, I've read that one with Bea Johnson. Yeah,
yeah,
she's French, but she lives in the US, or she
yes,
was anyway, and had quite a kind of standard, quite consumerist lifestyle. And
exactly.
then the book is fascinating, isn't it? Because it really details, like, really goes into a lot of detail of how you can kind of do without so much. And
Yeah.
and and how if somebody gives her something and she doesn't really want it, she's like, I'm sorry, I don't have a bin or I don't have a trash
Yeah,
can.
that's true. It's so radical. And I think I just love people with the most radical idea. So for example, Mark Boyle, the economist who lived without money, or Marie Kondo, the Japanese woman who teaches you to let go of everything that does not spark joy. These are radical people if you really listen to them.
I think there's a guy, I think he's called Robin Green. I have to
Oh,
check
yeah.
that. Yeah. And what I love about him is that he obviously lives quite an extreme life. I think he's one of those people that have less than 100 belongings or something
Yes.
like that. But I love that his message is like, I'm not saying you need to live like this. I'm not saying that everybody needs to copy me. I'm just showing you by my kind of extreme version that it's possible. So more people could, if they were inclined to, do a kind of a light version, or there are, I love that they're not saying like this is what you should do, but like they're like, look, I'm doing this in an extreme way. You can
Yeah.
adopt some of this into your life without it feeling like deprivation and without it feeling like you have to overhaul your entire existence.
Yeah, that's been my feeling with all of these people too, that I've adopted and tried out quite a few of their methods, and then some have just stuck, and it's altogether changed my life. So I'm also a big fan of Robin Greenfield. He introduced me to Mark Boyle in one of his videos because he's a big fan of Mark Boyle. And then Bea Johnson with her radical book Zero Waste. I tried out the radical lifestyle. It has really changed my life in many aspects. And then I dialed it down again. And these days I do produce household waste, but some things have just stuck. And I think also Bea Johnson also was being active as an artist when she wrote the book, and she then decided to only make art from waste. So instead of buying new paint, she sought out, what can I? Oh, I have these pieces of trash, and I'm just going to make a painting with trash. And I'm sure it looked great. I haven't seen it, but she was really radical about it. So I think this idea from zero waste is just ingrained in me that if there is a possibility to make it from waste, I am. But if one day I just want to have the experience to make a dress from a new roll of fabric, or maybe I'll buy, some dead stock, 3 meters, 4 meters, 5 meters of so-called dead stock fabric at least. But I will do that. Yeah.
I feel like there's probably a lot of sewers that were like, I just want to give her some fabric. Like, she
Oh,
deserves to have a length of fabric and see what
oh,
that's like.
that's true, but there's amazing possibilities in Berlin to buy secondhand fabric, and also, of course, you've mentioned on your podcast people are now selling fabric on Vinted, and I sort of keep an eye out whether it's really secondhand or whether it's like a first-hand business. But it's easy. It should be easy to get proper lengths of fabric for me that is not directly like first-hand Amazon
Yeah, yeah,
ordering
yeah.
or something.
I think
Yeah.
for me, the D-Stash for Palestine Instagram account has been a great source of
Mm.
knowing that I am getting fabric that was literally, it has been in somebody else's cupboard and they've just not used it, or it's left over from a project and they've still got a sizable piece and it's supporting
Cool.
an important size. But I think that's very regional. I think for example, there's lots of users in the UK. I don't know if there's many in other places, but there's probably equivalents as well, isn't there? As you say, in different localities, there's different kind of platforms, and some are
Yeah.
busier than others. Yeah.
And of course, there's loads of YouTubers who make wonderful dresses from curtains and bed sheets that they just thousands and thousands of videos that they get from a secondhand shop or something. Yeah.
Yeah, yeah, yeah. So aside from it being in your kind of familial background and being inspired by the kind of the zero waste movement and people doing things in a quite an extreme way, you were also inspired by the something that you messaged me. You were also inspired by the idea of gamification and how that plays into your approach as well. Can you talk about what gamification means and how that plays into your creative life as well?
Yeah, I recently read this book in German by a professor. I think he's an economics professor, and he researches gamification or something in economics. And I really liked that book because when I was reading it, I realized that my whole life is gamified.
Oh, okay.
So one
Explain.
of the things that I really like from the book is he explains that a game is when you make it hard for yourself. So for example, it would be so much easier to play football if there wasn't a goalkeeper and if
Yeah.
there wasn't an opposing team, right? Like the goal of football is to get the ball into the goal. Why are there, 11 people trying to stop you from doing that? And then you have all these ball games that are successful all around the world. They're all making it hard for you to reach your goal. And it's the same in everyday life. So he gives the example, if you want to walk more stairs to do something for your body, don't just walk the stairs, make it hard for yourself. So skip every fifth step, or try to do it to the rhythm of a certain song, a different song each time, or do it backwards half of the way. So anything you can do to make it hard for yourself will make it a game. And then I looked at my life, and all these things that motivate and inspire me, they're hard. Like, trying to piece little pieces of fabric together to see if I can make anything out of these remnants is a game. Or I do some dumpster diving, or I used to do dumpster diving, right? And it's just so exciting to see something reusable in the dumpster if in comparison to seeing the same item in a shop. And I'm sure that many who buy things in secondhand shops have this feeling, you went to a secondhand shop, it was full of things that you're not interested in, and then you found one normal t-shirt that fits you and you feel like a queen. And if you saw the same t-shirt in a regular shop, you would just not have that
Yeah,
rush.
with another 10, you're like, nah.
Yeah, it's not a game. It's not a treasure hunt. So I love this topic because people who may not have experienced, trying to make something out of tiny scraps of fabric or buying things secondhand or hunting, they may think, oh, it's so hard, zero waste lifestyle and secondhand and piecing and stuff. But also zero waste is a game. Like it's a challenge. Like how little waste can I produce maybe today or yeah.
I love that. I love that reframing of the idea of, because I do think that sometimes a lot of the things that we're talking about, like people do view it as a restriction, or like it would be annoying, or it would get in the way of your creativity. But actually, it is creativity in itself, isn't it? And
Yeah.
and fun,
So
basically.
yeah, my life is very gamified and sort of challenging, and it's more challenging than ordering something from Amazon. But I mean, also people who sew something for themselves that they could buy at a shop, they're also making it a game, right? We're not always sewing our dream garment. Some of us are just sewing black pairs of underwear or something that we could probably get for less time
Yep.
and less money at a shop. But it's like it's a challenge. Yeah.
It's a challenge, and the satisfaction of being like, yeah, I made that. I know how to
Yeah.
do that. I like to think of it in terms of like self-sufficiency, and like it's not. I'm not self-sufficient because I bought the elastic. I got the fabric. I didn't. I had to get those. An exchange had to happen. But I feel like if I can do the sewing bit myself, at least, like that's a form of self-sufficiency somehow. And I feel like I'm not beholden to going to the shop, and I'm not participating in some of the more unethical practices that are how clothing is produced these days. I'm not stupid. I don't think like, oh, I'm so sustainable, I'm
Yeah.
so ethical. But there's like an aspect that I'm now kind of like I've taken back for myself.
That's true. And I think it's also important topic, like how much are we actually changing, etc. Like also the zero waste movement. I went away a little bit from the zero waste first of all because it was a bit impractical, but also because I did learn that the thing that will change the world is community activities, or that's my current thought. If we help each other as a community, and if we exchange goods as a community and include people and let people shine and bring in their talents and ask them how they are, I think that's what's going to change so much. And it's also for me going back to a time where we all lived in communities in comparison to this cut off, buying relationship we have with a lot of people. So I think when I'm like not buying a meter of fabric and using something, I'm not changing the world. It's just like a game for me, just like zero waste. But I believe that this community aspect is what we can do. Like people who organize, fabric swaps, and then people meet each other and are inspired. And when we help, when we destash for Palestine and these things. Yeah.
Absolutely, absolutely. I'm thinking, you made me think then of the repair cafe that I volunteer at sometimes. And I get to meet people, not only other volunteers and the organisers, but also obviously the people that come along and bring their things. I'm meeting people that I would never meet in my regular, where I go from my home to my job to the supermarket. I always go to my kids' school, and I do, my local pub. And that's my kind of like normal route, and then I wouldn't meet those people even though they don't live that far from me. And I find that people who go to those kind of things and access those kind of things, they do so for a variety of reasons. Like for some, it's literal financial necessity, like they've got clothes that have holes in and they need help getting them patched because they can't afford to buy more. There's some people that who strive to keep their clothes in use for longer through environmental reasons. And I think there's some people that go there because they're lonely. They're all valid and they're all important, and I love that it brings a variety of people to a space that wouldn't necessarily connect. I think probably like some communities have like clothes swaps, don't they, that maybe do something similar.
Yeah, I feel exactly the same way. And I go to repair cafes, as they're called here, or textile repair too. And this feeling of meeting people, and like I said earlier, it's different to shorten someone's trousers with them than to have a coffee with them. It's
It
just
is.
this, you're just doing this small thing, but you're getting to know them and their wishes and their fears or their favorite pieces of clothing. It's just so lovely.
Absolutely, and they often open up about like, yeah, about that garment or about why they want it sorted and fixed and stuff in a way that, yeah, I think you're right. Like I love going for a coffee with my friends. Believe me,
Yeah.
it's one of my favorite things in the world. But it is more of like, okay, this is where we just tell each other what we've been doing since the last time we saw each other, and it is a different interaction, isn't it?
And you can also have different interactions with your friends. For example, my friends wrote each other in our chat group, "Hey guys, like, what in your household have you just not gotten around to? I'm gonna come over and help you." And I was actually not part of this.
Oh,
I didn't have time. And then one girl went to the other girl's place and like cleaned her windows, and then the other girl went to the other girl's place and visited her, and they cleared out some drawer or something. And that's just, oh yeah, even within existing friendships where we have a great time chatting, I personally feel it's so deep to get back to this helping each other. Maybe it's very normal for people who live in the countryside. Like when I was in the countryside, also in England, it was very normal for people to give each other their baby plants and lend each other some machine. But in the city, it can get lost.
yeah, which is kind of crazy, isn't it? Because like you're so close to them, and
Yeah.
there's so many people, and yeah, it's yeah, you're right. It's somehow harder. Do you know what? That's made me think like what you were just saying about your friend's WhatsApp group and the way you're saying like, oh, can you come and help me clean my windows, or the offer. Maybe that would be a good present rather than
Yeah.
thing. Now I'm thinking like, oh,
Like,
okay, can that be the present that I offer people?
I'm coming over to your house 1 or 2 hours, and whatever it is you want to do,
Yeah.
I'm going to help you. And then you can even put, but I don't want to, like clean the drain or something.
Yeah.
Oh,
Asterisk.
I've
Yeah.
had people say they need help clearing out their cellar because it's so overwhelming, or they just never dust.
Sometimes you just need somebody to help you get started, don't
Yeah.
you? It's not even to necessarily do the start. It's just like hold your hand, like, right, come on, let's begin.
Yeah, exactly. Just body doubling. And then as a textile person, of course, mending, just offering to mend people, but also having the boundaries to say, I do not want to mend that. It's always it goes both ways.
That
Yeah.
made me think of Mary Morton, who is one of the authors of Stitch It, Don't Ditch It, a new mending book. And she also volunteers at the Shrub Carp in Edinburgh and the Street Stitchers in Edinburgh. And I think, I don't know how many Christmases she's done it in a row, but for her son is older, he has children of his own, and for Christmas literally like passed a bag and like, this bag you can put in anything that needs mending, textile items, for the year. So anytime I see you, take the bag back and I'll fix whatever's in the bag and then bring the bag back. And that's for
Oh,
a year. And that's such a good gift,
that's
isn't
such
it?
a
Like the
good
gift
gift.
of mending for a
Yes.
year.
Yes. Oh, that's so cool.
Okay, I'm doing that. I'm doing that for a friend of mine. Okay.
Oh, but what if she listens to the podcast?
No, they don't.
Okay.
They love me and they support me, but they don't listen to the
Okay.
podcast.
All right.
If they listen to the podcast, they could probably do their own mending.
Yeah, probably. Yeah.
But speaking of people that listen to the podcast, so I'm guessing that most of the people that listen to the podcast, if not all, obviously, because you listen to the podcast too, but I'm guessing that most of us, I should include myself in that, source our fabric from fabric shops, and also possibly from some of it from de-stash sales or fabric swaps and maybe thrift stores as well. But I'm assuming that you'd like to see more people and makers use reclaimed and discarded materials for more of their projects or our projects. So what tips could you offer more like quote unquote regular sewers that are listening when it comes to sourcing and project planning, but also maybe mindset as well?
I think in terms of projects, obviously small projects. Like I said, I do sew a lot of mittens, headbands, patchwork scarves. I'm wearing one right now.
Which looks amazing.
Thank you. What else? I've made socks. You can sew socks. There's great tutorials online, underwear, and so on. So keychains and pillowcases for friends, like personalized pillowcases. And then the wallets and small cotton bags, which are also great presents, or small zipper bags for your passport or for, bank cards you don't take with you on a regular basis.
Oh, your chargers if you're going on a
Yeah,
trip.
oh, there's so many things. And I've also just made bags for when you makeup bags. And I've got great feedback. So of course, just these projects are great to make from repurposed fabric that you get somewhere, and also generally scrap fabric. I think that's my main tip, because I'm probably blind to my own mindset part of the time, because that's just the only way I function. But I do, again, I think it's so fascinating how we have different creative types, because I notice what is very hard for me is to picture an end product just the way I want it and then delineate every step. I just can't do that.
Right.
And I know that some people, they have this amazing image in their mind,
Yeah.
which fabric, which cut, and then they buy a pattern and so on. I just can't wrap my head around that. I'm just the other way around. I just look at the fabric and I'm like, oh, I think this could be this and that.
Yeah.
And
And like with your paper as well, like, you
yeah,
don't know what the piece is going to look like at the end.
yeah, I could not paint onto a white canvas. I just can't do that. That's just not my way of creative thinking. I would always take something, like I would probably be the person to splatter paint on it and then see if I can make something out of the splatter.
So you kind of need restriction in a way, or you
Yeah.
need a starting point.
I'd actually be very interested in talking about people to this. Maybe I know there's a chat in the Patreon. Maybe we can chat there, because I'm very interested in these two types, and maybe there are more types. But I'm not the blank canvas, and I have a vision type. I always need the restriction and the pre-existing things.
Okay, I'm now obsessed with this idea. This is going to happen.
Yeah, I was so interested. And I actually,
Okay, this is going to be a series of episodes as well. by the way.
oh, cool. Types, like creative types. And actually, I noticed that I forgot to answer something earlier on, because you asked me how I do my patterns. I said I clone patterns, and then I did the zero waste patterns. I actually use the Lutterlow system. Do you know that?
When you mentioned it, I then Googled it, and I'd love you to explain. I hadn't really heard of it before. I'd love you
Ah,
to. So it's kind of like self-drafting in a way.
no, yeah, it is weird. I love this system. It's I think because it's also very radical or very unusual. It's right up my alley. So basically, Lutterloh was a German woman who invented this system in the 1930s, I think. And instead of sending you a sewing pattern, they send you a tiny A5 piece of paper, which is half as big as a regular letter paper. And on this, there's the image of whatever you want to sew. And on the back, there's the pattern piece. And it's maybe, the pattern pieces are like 5 centimeters big.
Ah,
And what they also send you, I bought it secondhand, but you can also buy it firsthand, is a little pin and then a measuring tape. And you only take two measurements, which is the bust and the waist, I think. And then depending on your own measurement, you put the pin in the measuring tape at a different place. So the pattern piece, you're going to pin it into this tiny pattern piece, and then you're going to draw by putting dots all around it. So if that doesn't make sense, imagine there's
no,
like,
it does. It
yeah,
does.
imagine there's a tiny star on a piece of paper and you put in a string and you turn it all around the star. You could draw a big star if you were to put a point always at the same. Yeah. And I love this system because it takes away very little space because it's just A5 pieces of paper. And I also feel like it's very environmentally friendly because I'm not printing out anything. I actually
Yeah.
use all sorts of paper I find in the bin for pattern drafting. As you can imagine, like I found Christmas paper, used Christmas paper, I pattern draft on that one, newspapers. Or if you look in a paper bin, if you have that in your country, there's sometimes huge pieces of paper just in there. And I drafted on waste paper and then, or not drafted, I just copied the pattern on waste paper. And it's a system for not total beginners because it won't tell you how to assemble the t-shirt. It'll just give you
Ah,
the front of the t-shirt, the back of the t-shirt, and a sleeve. And you have to remember that, if you want to make a sleeve, they have to be mirror images of each other and so on. You have to have the knowledge and what to sew first, and you have to know how to hem things. But I love this because it's great for upcycling. I don't know. Why is it great for upcycling? I don't know. I could probably upcycle just as much with other patterns, but I just love it because I don't have to print anything out and I don't have to order anything.
this is very cool. Okay, I did find some examples online. I'm going to put some links in the show
Mm.
notes as well, so people can see what we're talking
And
about.
also vintage patterns. I know that when people buy vintage patterns, sometimes they have to buy reproductions because if they bought an original paper vintage pattern, it might be falling apart. With the Lutterloh system, it's just A5 pieces of paper. So they usually haven't had as much wear and tear.
Mm,
And you can get 50s, 60s patterns, originals from this system.
amazing. Okay, that is so cool. That could be a whole other episode.
Yeah, it's so fascinating. And another thing I also remembered is because you mentioned elastics that you buy firsthand. I've got this whole list of where I source different notions, also not just the fabric. So I harvest old clothes, either ones I see in the street or at clothes swap parties that are just done. Like I don't tend to take apart clothing that's amazing condition. But I harvest elastics from things that are just done, and I harvest a lot of zippers from things, like people want to give
Yeah.
me a lot of their trousers. I actually get more offers to receive trousers than I can take. But if the trousers are just really destroyed, then I'll harvest the zipper. And I get all sorts of stuff from all sorts of places. Yeah.
I love it. I love it. Oh, I could talk to you forever. This has been amazing. Where can people find you if they want to see some examples of your work and the things that you get up to?
I actually haven't posted that much of my work, but if some people follow me on Instagram under A to Zero Waste, which I'm betting you put in the show notes,
I
then
will.
I will post more. I recently posted one little project that,
Or is that the pillow?
yeah, the pillow, and
Yeah.
I have so many photos as I showed you that I could post, which I
Yeah.
probably should start doing. Yeah.
Okay. Well, you have to know you've got 2 weeks.
Okay.
Amazing. This has just been the best conversation. Thank you so much for your time. You've really inspired me, and I know that it's going to get a lot of people thinking and exploring ways to be more frugal and and inventive with exploring different sources of textiles. So thank you so much.
Thank you for having me, and thank you for the podcast. It inspires me no end.